Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, focusing on real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Now, Derek, we forgot to mention this last week, but the European Championship has begun in rugby. Were you able to catch any of it over the weekend? I use quotation marks because now that the South African teams are involved,
hey, you know what?
I've
always heard that South Africa is the most beautiful country in Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why they call it. That's why they call it South Africa, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be hilarious. One of those teams, honestly, one of those teams has to win. Just to say, like the Sharks are the European champions, Stormers, whoever's in it. Any of those.
I mean, it's like one of those American teams that won the Grey Cup.
And that only happened once. That only happened.
Yeah, but once is all you need.
That was the Baltimore Stallions.
Yeah,
the Baltimore Stallions, I think, won the Grey Cup. I hope I'm right on that. I also love the fact that they took because the Baltimore Colts relocated to Indy, and then the CFL team was like, we'll just call the team the Stallions because we're just going to name all the Baltimore football teams after horses. But yeah, so that was kind of weird. But at least the Grey Cup's not called like the Canadian Rugby Cup or the Canadian.
Yeah, I suppose so. But were you able to watch any of the games at all?
Yeah, no, Saracens game was really good. There was a kind of back and forth. Kind of weird that the Saracens haven't played in like 3 weeks because of the Warriors Wasp thing.
Yeah.
They mixed in that nice loss to the Tel Aviv Heat, though. That's apparently the only team that can beat them, so that's fine. At least Israel's not in Europe. So I mean, I think we're good. But yeah, no, it was a good game. Edinburgh probably really wants that one play back where they had the intercept and then couldn't capitalize on a couple of really great tackles in scramble defense. But yeah, I think your Ospreys didn't fare too well against who did they play? They played Leicester, right?
Yeah, they played the Leicester Tigers, and I'm Welsh.
Yeah,
I'm used to. I've seen the Ospreys play the past few years. I know how this song and dance goes. It's not a surprise to me in any way, shape, or form. And so you have the Ospreys, who were the highest finishing Welsh team in the URC. So not even one of the teams that made it into the top half of the table, just the best Welsh team. And they are currently playing, well, they played Leicester, who are the defending English champions. Yeah. And their opponents this coming weekend are Montpellier, who are the defending top 14 champions. I know how this is going to go. I'm just used to it. I'm just waiting for it to be done. It's okay. I've seen how this goes. It's fine.
You need to cheer for some more successful sports teams still.
I cheered for them when they were successful sports teams. That's the problem.
See, now you're just paying for it. Now you're suffering.
Yeah, now I have to remember the halcyon days of 2012 when they could actually beat Leinster in Leinster.
Yeah. Sale absolutely annihilated Ulster, though. That was a big.
Yeah, that was a turnout for the books. No,
kind of looking at the scores now, getting a little recap. South Africa does well against English teams, not as well against French teams by the looks of it. The Bulls beat Lyon, Stormers lost to Claremont, Sharks beat Harlequins. Yeah,
so, and the
Dragons 2-1 for South Africa to start. That's not that bad.
Well, the Dragons tied their game as well, I believe. So 2-1-1. Yeah. Wait, who did the Cheetahs play?
Well, not in the Champions Cup, right? In the challenge.
Yeah, they're in the Challenge Cup.
Challenge Cup. We're going to Challenge Cup. The Lions tied the Dragons. Cheetahs beat POW. And so South Africa faring pretty well in conquering Europe right now. So good for them, I guess.
Yeah, right. I think we've focusing a bit too much on the other side of the Atlantic. I think we need to be focusing on the Pacific because whilst we were having the interview with Cameron Packaway last week, we forgot that. Well, we didn't forget. We just were so inundated that the Canadian Universities Men Rugby Championship had wrapped up that previous weekend. And, it was a pretty good competition. Okay, there was the major upset was in the first round where the Trinity Western Spartans beat the UVic Vikes with the last kick of the game to take them through to the champion semifinals. The Vikes, however, progressed fairly well against the other teams in the bottom half, but unfortunately, the hosts, there as Corey Hitchborn, their coach, was saying, these guys are training to win titles, to win championships. And, they set their mind to the task. They were playing at home as well, which is also a huge benefit. And they did really well. I got to give credit as well to the Redbirds, the first team from Quebec to make it through to the CUMRC finals. But Thunderbirds were just on another level throughout this entire tournament. And so we have the final standings. In 8th was the Golden Hawks, 7th were the Dinos, 6th were the Seahawks, 5th were the Vikes, 4th were the Spartans, 3rd and the bronze medal goes to the Griffins, 2nd goes to the McGill Redbirds, and the first place, unsurprisingly, winning their 4th title in 5 tournaments is the UBC Thunderbirds. So congratulations to all the players there. And thanks for giving us some entertaining 60-minute rugby matches for that week. Really appreciate it. But yeah, it's always good to see the new breed of rugby players coming through, and hopefully these are names that we'll be seeing, come up in the Pacific Pride and hopefully in MLR in the years to come. So we've gone from one end of the Pacific and we're going back to the Atlantic, but we are actually going to go to South Africa. But first of all, we have to take a stop in Dubai because we have had 2 stages of the World Sevens Series with both the men and women playing. And first up was the Dubai Sevens. The women in Dubai, they started with a loss to the USA, followed by a loss to Australia, only getting a win against China. When they got to the knockout stages, they had their first win against Brazil, followed by the second against Japan, leaving them in 9th place. The men, on the other hand, also had a loss against the USA in their first pool stage match, followed by another loss to Samoa, again finishing with a victory, this time over Japan, only by 18-14. In the knockout stages, they lost 17-7 to Kenya, then won a 29-0 win over Uganda, finally concluding with a 38-7 loss to Spain, which puts them in 14th place. As we move now on to South Africa and the Cape Town Sevens, with the women, it was a draw against France to start the pool stage, which is pretty disappointing because they were leading at halftime 19-0 and concluded the game at 19-all. Then it was the same as the previous week, a loss to the USA. This time it's 24-7. And finally, a win over Japan at 21-12. That put them into the Cup quarterfinals, but they were up against New Zealand, and that was a 50-5 loss. Then they played France again. This time it was France who emerged victorious as Canada lost that game 14-19. And finally, another loss against Fiji, 12-26, which puts them in 8th place. And in the men's competition, a very tough group to begin with. Host South Africa, that was a 17-7 loss. Then against France, that was a 19-12 loss. And then against Fiji, which I believe was a 36-17 loss as well. When they got to the knockout stages, they were up against Australia, and they lost that game as well, 33-7. Then up against Japan. This was their only win of the weekend, which was a 31-14 win, before losing again to Kenya, 21-10, with the final place again being 14th. And so in the current standings in the world, the women are, I believe, 9th in the world out of 13 teams, whilst the men's Canadian team are currently placed, if my notes want to load up, the Canadian team are currently placed 13th. And this is interesting to keep in mind because it's been announced by World Rugby that there are going to be changes to the Sevens series starting in December 2023. So in the next iteration of the Sevens series and next season, to be specific. They're saying there's going to be 7 rounds in 7 destinations across 7 months playing sevens. I think there's a theme going on here, but I don't know if anyone's picked up on it. All of these destinations are going to be fully combined with equal men's and women's series, 7 series events happening. However, one of the key things is the number of men's teams will be reduced from 16 to 12, and this is to align with the current Olympic model. An annual grand finale event will take place in the 7th round, which will see the top 8 ranked teams after 6 rounds compete to be crowned series champions. The teams ranked 9th to 12th will join the top 4 ranked teams from the Challenger Series in a high-stakes relegation playoff competition, which will see 4 teams secure their place in the next edition of the World Sevens Series. The 4 unsuccessful teams will go into regional competitions to qualify for the next Challenger Series, which will comprise 12 men's and 12 women's teams competing in the 2nd level of International Rugby Sevens. So that's a pretty big change going on at the moment. To compare it with what we have now, so we currently have Hong Kong, Dubai, Cape Town, Hamilton in New Zealand, Sydney, LA, Vancouver, Singapore, Toulouse, and London as sevens destinations. For the men, Hong Kong is appearing twice this year, so that's actually 11. And of those I've just listed, the only ones that aren't double headers, so men's and women's, are LA, Singapore, and London. So if you take those 3 out, you technically have 7 destinations ready to go that are currently equipped for the men's and women's to be hosted at the same time. Mm-hmm. But that big thing of the reduction of teams from 16 to 12 should be ringing major alarm bells, because if the Canadian men are only 13th, then it looks like they'll be in the Challenger Series for next season. Derek, what did you make of these new changes coming to sevens?
Yeah, I think I'm torn on it. I think it does on the surface. I think the surface level, I think it sounds like kind of a cool idea. To have I like the grand finale idea of being have a big event at the end of the year, where I guess sounds like you have to play for the championship, a little bit of a playoff type scenario. For the world champion at the end of the year, I like that idea. That sounds cool. It'll probably be a really entertaining competition with this format. Not gonna deny that or whatever. That'll probably work. The other side of the coin, though, is it really does feel like it hurts a lot of tier 2 nations. It hurt there, and even looking at if you're looking at those cities that you just named, and it's hard to not look at that and be like Vancouver's getting cut. You know what I mean? Hong Kong is a staple. South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, France, and London aren't losing anything or whatever. So you're probably losing. You're probably having LA, because I think World Rugby wants to push the USA market a little bit. So that's probably
especially with them hosting the 15s World Cup.
Dubai has a ton of money. So I don't know. But it just seems like Vancouver seems like almost the easiest one to cut. Right. So it's is Rugby Canada? So that's my concern immediately. Is Rugby Canada going to lose one of the biggest events that we have?
Yeah.
That's my immediate concern. Right. If that's gone. However, the one benefit for that is obviously, the one benefit for that though is obviously that, Vancouver is well set up to do men's and women's at the same time. So maybe that helps it. But again, as you kind of mentioned, I guess, how are they doing the 12 teams, whoever finishes top 12 this year?
Yeah, so I've just gone onto the Sevens website, and it says, how will relegation be decided from the men's series in 2023? And Well, first of all, it's not really clear because
Yeah,
it's
that's what I mean.
talking about next year. But I do have a feeling that it'll probably be a
It's going
case
to be the
of
top
they
12.
will. Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
it's this.
Canada's got some work to do then
Yeah,
because they got it.
and also as well, I keep saying as though series 2023, not realizing that the majority of the sevens going forward now will be taking place next year. So
2023, 2024.
So yeah, so it says here the 15th ranked core team based on accumulated series points following the 10th round in Toulouse will be relegated. The teams ranked 12th, 13th, and 14th at the end of the Toulouse will enter a 4-team relegation playoff together with the Challenger Series winners at the 11th and final round of the series in London. So
okay, that's good. That's good. So that means so at the end of the day, if you're 14th or higher, you get to at least play for it. What that sounds like? You get to play for it if you're 14th.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But then again, if they were also saying that next season is going to be 12 teams.
Well, what you just said.
Hang on. I didn't finish. Sorry. The final paragraph says the relegation playoff will be a round robin format with the top 2 teams when playing a final. The winner will become the 12th core team on the 2024 series, while the other 3 teams will enter their respective regional sevens championships in order to qualify for the 2024 World Rugby Sevens Challenge.
That's the other thing too. Like, what are the regional sevens gonna like? What's that gonna look
like? That's going to be like the RAN sevens.
Yeah. See, I feel like that's going to be the exact thing though. Is like I feel like this is going to hurt a lot of those like those fringe countries that are like Canada and like the countries that are immediately around Canada in the standings. Is like if you lose, it's going to hurt your level of competition a lot. I don't understand why they're cutting it down to just 7 rounds. And like 7 rounds once a month too. Like you're not building much.
Yeah, because
as a series,
that's the thing as well. If you look at the calendar at the moment, so we've had Dubai and Cape Town, which admittedly aren't near each other, but are roughly, close on time zones. So it can be a case of, yes, you'll be flying a long way, but it won't be the worst thing in the world. The next rounds will be Hamilton and Sydney. Those are back to back. After that, it's LA and Vancouver, again, back to back. Following that, it's Hong Kong and Singapore, again, back to back.
Yeah.
And then finally, we have Toulouse and London, which are, I'm maybe repeating myself here, but back to back.
So, yeah, like that's the one thing that really, like, I really don't get that either. It's like, why are we spreading out a 7-round tournament across 7 months?
Yeah.
It's less tournaments, it's less teams. Like I said, the competition itself will probably be fun, and that last stage will probably be very interesting to watch.
Yeah,
but everything around it doesn't seem like it's a positive, though.
Yeah, this kind of goes back now to what we were talking about at like the Sevens World Cup, in that the Sevens World Cup is now just like a 3-day competition, and it just feels like a less interesting stage of the World Seven Series, which then brings, when you compare it to like the Olympics, which is, with the men's and women's competition almost comes to like a week's worth of rugby content. It's like, if you want to gear everything towards the Olympics, fine.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the World Cup now for 2026, you need to be matching that, or ideally going beyond it.
Yeah, you have to come
up. But that is a conversation that we will have probably in like 2025 or something like that.
Yeah. I don't see how this is helping very many people though. Regardless of who it is, someone's losing a huge tournament, regardless of who that ends up being. I really hope it's not Canada and Vancouver, but someone's losing it. There's going to be a handful of teams that are going to have less competition out of that, right? It's I just don't know. It's very perplexing. Out of everything that maybe we could tweak with sevens, and we had that conversation around the World Cup for sure. I don't think less rounds and less teams is the answer to anything that I would. But hey, I don't know. I guess we'll see how it plays out next year. I really hope Canada's able to hang around and be that probably 9th to 12th team. Or
I know the men's sevens especially are going through.
The women's sevens will be fine. I feel like they'll be fine. But
I think the women's sevens should be okay, just because there's already 12 teams in the competition.
Yeah, it makes this season more stressful.
Absolutely.
Now it's like, oh man, like you got because you probably. I don't even know what would happen to that, because even if it's going to be that, how do you qualify for the Olympics? Like the Olympics will be less the Olympics itself would probably be less interesting. So you're probably going to end up with teams that have to follow Olympic qualification things that are going to end up in a competition with these teams that are just running with the top 12 all year.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
If memory serves.
Sorry.
If memory serves correctly, it's the top 4 teams are from the World Series qualify for the Olympics in 2024.
Yeah.
But that will be, in Toulouse for the women, in London for the men, this in 2023. So at the moment, in the women's, we have Australia, New Zealand, USA, and France will be the teams that will qualify for the women. For the men, it is Samoa, South Africa, New Zealand, and the USA again. And then it falls to regional competitions, and those competitions can only be determined on, which global continental federation has had how many teams qualify, and so on and so forth. So we can't really specify anything yet, but as it currently stands, that if Canada wants to qualify for the Olympics, they'll have to go through like the RAN Sevens again, like they had to do for the Sevens World Cup earlier this year,
which they dominate.
Exactly,
like they as much as they may as much as they may struggle, bounce between being able to, if they get the right bounce to going from maybe being able to podium a tournament to finishing 14th and stuff a few weeks in a row. But when it gets to when it comes to RAN though, they dominate those. That level of competition, if you lose this, that level of competition is probably not gonna be it's gonna be tough. It'd probably be tough to get back. And if teams do get, that's the other thing I'd be concerned if teams go away from competing against these, say the likes of South Africa or New Zealand for a year, and then come back, win their regional thing, win whatever the play-in tournament or whatever that's going to be called for the relegation promotion thing. Right, you win that, and it's are we just going to see a cycle of 4 teams at the bottom that just get recycled and annihilated, and then recycled and annihilated, and then recycled and annihilated? Just because
I don't know. It may even be a case that by the time the Olympics come to Los Angeles, for example, in 2028, or even the Gold Coast in 2032. They're finding sevens is a popular sport. It's attracting, lots of ticket sales for the Olympics and stuff like that. And they may say well, if that's the case and we can do it, let's expand to 16 teams. And then we'll just come
already
back
at 16 teams.
In the Olympics, I think it's 12.
No, well, the Olympics is 12. But
that's what I'm saying. Is if the Olympics decides to
the Olympics is a different issue altogether, though. It's just
but because the World Series is following the Olympics, it would be interesting to see that if the Olympics do say, for LA or the Gold Coast, we're going to expand this tournament to 16. We're going to have it in 2 different stadiums, so we can have the men's and women's competition running at the same time, and then we're just back to where we are. But I'm speaking in hypotheticals. Also, something I should mention about the Olympics, and I was just going through which teams automatically qualify. France as well. So I don't know why I didn't like pick up on the hosts getting through automatically. That's my bad. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to completely dismiss this. Obviously, there are the concerns of Vancouver losing the Sevens there, but nothing's been announced.
I was gonna say, yeah, I have nothing to go off of on that.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. These decisions are probably going to be made either towards the end of the current season or in the off season. Next summer.
I think that's my fear, though, is looking at the standings. You see where Canada is, and it's like, well, if they don't, they're on the series, like it's not going to be in Vancouver. But Rugby Canada also really needs the Vancouver Sevens.
Yeah,
right. So, want to talk about something fun?
Yeah, I suppose we can. Let's move away from dreaded hypothetical. See, my Welshness is rubbing off on you. It's just pessimism automatically coming in.
You see this symbol up here? I'm pointing at a Leaf logo on my hat for anybody just listening. This is born and bred pessimism. You don't know pessimism until it's to a Leaf.
This year will be their year.
Mitch Marner's on a 22-game point streak, and fans are like, he could have more points though.
Yeah,
right. It's like it's the net. That was a bad giveaway.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the thing. We've been looking at this part of the world and that part of the world. Let's bring it all back. Let's bring it right back to Toronto because we're going to be talking about some MLR news. As we said, we've, last week with the interview means that we've had a buildup of some news, some trades that have come in. So let's start off with one of the big things. Jack McRogers has re-signed for the 2023 season. This will be his 5th season with the Arrows, the top try scorer from 2022. Glad to see that he's back. Also, a new signing is Conan O'Donnell, an Irish player that is currently playing for Northland in New Zealand. That prop will be coming to Toronto as preseason will be starting in just a few weeks' time. But as we have some arrivals, we also have some departures. Lindsay Stevens has been traded to Chicago for salary cap considerations. Lindsay Stevens was picked up. It's now been confirmed, I guess, that Lindsay Stevens was picked up by Toronto in the dispersal draft that happened about a month ago. And also the big trade that's happened is the Arrows players player of 2022, Ronan Foley, has been traded to Seattle also for salary cap considerations. That's an interesting decision to make. Obviously, we will have to see how the Arrows and Seattle both play out in the upcoming season. But always grateful for Ronan's involvement with the Arrows since going to Atlanta in 2021 and then being in Toronto for 22. And when the Seawolves come, if he's playing, we'll be happy to cheer for him until the whistle starts. And then it's we'll have to wait 80 minutes until we're okay with him. And of course, Lindsay Stevens, that Arrow stalwart,
legend,
Canadian.
We have to have a ceremony for Lindsay Stevens, I think.
Yeah, once an Arrow, always an Arrow. So.
Exactly. We should, man. I've seen NHL teams do that for guys that get traded really quick before they even play a game or whatever. Some teams have done the joke like thanks for the memories posts and stuff during the thing. They're actually usually pretty funny. I encourage the Toronto Arrows to do this just for my own personal amusement. But also, I bet the Arrows don't play Chicago at home, so I guess we might have to wait 2 years for this personal amusement.
Well, when Stevens comes back, we'll be there to cheer him on.
So obviously some interesting things. Great to see McRogers come back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Gene Cementon right now, obviously with Lindsay Stevens getting traded, Gene Cementon's the only other hooker on the squad right now. So obviously Andrew Quattrin it will be suiting up for the Free Jacks. And they and it's might be an opportunity for our McRogers to be a legit starter. I guess it's like as of right now, I mean, I'm assuming there's probably going to be a couple more signings that the Arrows are still going to make before the season actually starts.
Yeah.
Just for numbers purposes. But so like, yeah, so Mick Rogers right now, I guess he's got Gina Cementon as his competition, but it looks like this could be an opportunity for him to be a starter in Major League Rugby. And he's obviously had a lot of success, as you mentioned. He was the team's leading try scorer last year, despite the fact that he was coming off the bench in most games. So that's obviously great. Conan O'Donnell, played for Connacht for a number of years before moving down to New Zealand.
Mhm.
You know, um, the one jersey is gonna be that's gonna be some training camp story to watch.
Yeah.
Now we got obviously Lonnie Falavia returning, who we all loved last year. Just a wrecking ball every time he got ball in hand. Connor Grindall from Australia, Canadian eligible. That's going to be a good one. Right. That's going to be a super interesting player to watch too. And now O'Donnell. So that's that's going to be fascinating to look out for that little battle for that loose head jersey. I mean, ultimately front row seems solid. I mean, the tight head side too, Salmon, Roland, and Fat. Right, like, so that's looking pretty good. The Arrows pack as a whole, I think, is looking pretty good. And I think, kind of like looking at it, Ronan Foley, obviously, like, he had an unreal year last year. He was, I believe, when we recorded our podcast at the end of the season, I think we both gave him MVP for the team, I believe. And then, obviously the Arrows players kind of themselves felt similarly and gave him players player award as well. So he's obviously going to be missed. Looking at it though, like I don't hate the trade. One, like, you can't let Ronan Foley go for nothing, so I'm glad they got him back with some salary cap considerations here. But the Arrows back row continues to kind of be really pretty deep. So like, even, right. So like right now, like if you look at this, if you look at it right now, like the number 8 jersey, that right, you got Travis Larson and Mitch Eady right now. So you have Travis Larson and Mitch Eady, who were both brought in this year. And then you have, for the flankers, you still have O'Neill, Rumball, Flesh, and then you drafted Rutten. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's at the end of the day, like, one of those guys isn't playing, right?
Yeah.
And even if you were to rock with you put an 8-man on the bench, one of, like, if you keep Foley, that means like one of Larson or Edie isn't, like, it becomes like the back row, especially that number 8 jersey, with the signing of Larson and Edie, it's pretty crowded, right? So that makes so I mean, it does make a little bit of sense to try to get some salary cap back, or get something back for him. Lindsey Stevens being traded to Chicago, I think is really hilarious, looking at some of the MLR timeline stuff, because they haven't really acknowledged officially what the results of the draft are yet. They're acknowledging guys being traded from the teams that Rugby Wrap Up and America's Rugby News reported that they were drafted by. But there's nothing actually official up on MLR's website to say that these guys ever played for or ever property of these teams that they're now being traded from, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I'm obviously not really sure what happened there. I mean, there was obviously, we knew some of the rules were going to be that teams would have, X amount of time to sign guys after. And then, again, though, I think it's one of those things that if you really look at like Lindsey Stevens and stuff in this situation, but at the end of the day, you picked up this guy in the dispersal draft and then just flipped it for free salary. This is free salary cap.
Yeah,
basically, right? You got a guy in this dispersal draft, and then it's free salary cap. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's one of those things where it's like, it's still, I find it's kind of tough, I think, to judge some of these trades sometimes, because you don't really know how much that salary cap is. Right. But it'd be interesting to kind of see what the Arrows end up doing with that, or what they possibly, maybe what they've already done with that. Maybe they're trying to, that's the thing, we don't really know, because they don't actually share the value of the numbers. But I mean, I think like the pack, I think, is in good shape. And as sad as it is to see Foley go, I still think the pack's in good shape, and it is looking a little crowded. So I mean, I would rather see guys get traded for salary cap considerations than just let go for nothing. So at the end of the day, if it couldn't work, I'm happy with it. But Chicago,
Chicago looking
damn good,
strong.
man.
Strong from what we've heard, but obviously nothing's been officially announced. But I mean, they do have the playing rights. Just going by the trade wire to Michael Duvall, Sean Yakubian. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. JP Eloff, Mason Koch.
Eloff! I forgot about that one. That's a big one.
Mason Koch, even. They got salary cap considerations from the trade of Nathan Den Hood. South African going to Houston. What a surprise. They got Lindsay Stevens. They've also traded away 2 of their international slots for salary cap considerations as well. So they've got some money to play around with as well. But I think it's also worth considering that teams seem to be doing trades now for salary cap considerations. And again, this may come from the expansion draft as well. So, for example, Sears Duru has been traded and signed for the Legion, and the Free Jacks got salary cap considerations in the process. And I think every team's doing this because, injuries happen. You're going to need to call someone in to come over. But also something that's been spotted on the trade wire is the trade and signing deadline for the 2023 MLR season is the season's midpoint, which is considerably earlier than it was in the 2022 season. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. It may be a case of, between
I wonder if that's a reaction to LA and Austin.
Possibly, but I mean, between round 8 and round 9, we may get like a flurry of trades happening.
When was it last year?
I think it was like 3 or 4 rounds of the regular season.
That's got to be a reaction to LA Austin. That has to be. I don't know how else you read into that.
And the thing as well, I don't know if that's for like the end of the season and the postseason, and then once the season and postseason end, you can start trading for, draft positions and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it works in basically other sports, right? Every other sport, they have a trade deadline, and then once you kind of have to put a hold on everything, and then once the season's over, it's open again, right? That's pretty much how it works. But
all we can say now is going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But
I would love like an MLR trade deadline thing. I mean, other leagues have made that a really big deal, and it's a good like media opportunity thing too, right? Good little content creation. But
absolutely. Well,
Chicago also hired Elena Gattinger too from LA, former Rugby Canada like operations manager. So they're going after everybody, all the former players, all the former staff. This is just a fusion team.
Yeah, it's it's obviously going to be a fusion team, especially if the head coach is the former Gil.
That's what I mean. It's like everybody, and then you kind of look at someone like the trades that they're making. Like they just traded for a guy that they lost in the dispersal draft, and they traded to get him back.
Yeah,
in Lindsay Stevens, like they just got him back, right? So yeah, that'll be interesting. It is interesting though, seeing how many guys from the dispersal draft, like you said, are being traded for salary cap space, and it is
of the Arrows players that they supposedly drafted that I thought was going to be traded. I definitely did not expect the Canadian to be traded, but it's obviously down to like the coaching and the staff decision. So
that would be interesting too, because obviously Brayton, we just kind of talked about the Arrows back row as well, and that's Brayton back can slot in there too, right? So it's we'll still see what happens if he signs, but like there's a lot of salary cap. Dallas got a international slot from Chicago for salary cap. Houston got an international slot for salary cap. Houston got some salary cap for Dallas for Juan Pablo Zeiss and Marcus Maroney. yeah, I think we're probably going back a little far for recapping now, but there's a lot of trades. Yeah, send a couple trades just even for today too. Like Sears Duru again was for salary cap space. Chicago just traded for Michael Del Wall to Dallas, getting salary cap space back for that. But yeah, there's JP Eloff for salary cap too. Jeez, I forgot that JP Eloff played in Chicago already. But like this team is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, they've said on their social media channels that they're going to be announcing the team in due course, and it seems at this rate it's just going to be a blanket announcement of all the players. I mean,
it probably.
If you go on their website,
so close to the season too.
They've
announcements, but
they've announced the acquisition of Eloff. They've also announced the signing of like Bryce Campbell, but. Yeah, I think it is just going to be a blanket announcement of saying that these are the guys we've signed. Release up the hounds or release the hounds, whichever one they want to go with. But guys, you got to crack on with that and actually announce all your players.
It's an interesting question though, because I'm looking at the trade wire. What happened to the salary cap that San Diego traded away for Marcel Brocky and Luke Burton? Like what happened to that? To that salary cap? Is that just like dead rent? Like, do
they just get a player for? Is that just? Do they just get a player for nothing now? Is that?
Yeah,
I mean, because you can't just give it both to Chicago because that's not.
Well, they didn't make that trade with Chicago.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
They traded with Austin and they made those trades with Austin and LA. So back in September, to recap, Luke Burton was LA traded Luke Burton to San Diego for salary cap, and Austin traded Marcel Brocky to San Diego for salary cap. So what happened to that salary cap? Does San Diego get that back?
Well, it's not San Diego salary cap, is it? It's just
it would be San Diego gave up salary cap to get these players. So do they get it back? Where does that go?
Yeah, because then you can argue that they still have the player. So
yeah, but you just gave salary cap to nobody. Like, is that just like they paid to not have those guys go through the draft? I guess.
Maybe to be when this was made, this was back in September. So
it's way before the draft because it was with LA and Austin. So
no, but that's what I mean. As in, maybe it was being done with the idea that Austin and LA could find buyers who would then be able to continue the season.
I don't know.
Well, continue them into next season.
San Diego picked up Christian Poitevin from Atlanta for salary cap again too. So lots of LA and Austin. Actually, looking through the trade wire, it's a lot of LA and Austin guys getting traded after the dispersal draft too, which is also very interesting.
Well, I gotta feel bad for Christian Alvarez, who was traded in August to Austin from NOLA and is now ended up in the wilderness for a few months, to say the least. Okay, but speaking on MLR and some of the teams that we've just mentioned, is that new kits have been coming out in a steady drip. And I think what it seemed like it was originally going to be was that a new team was going to announce their kit every weekday. That hasn't happened. It's just been we've only had 3 of the 12 teams announce their kits, and maybe there'll be a pickup between.
I think we'll get to it later. I think New York in their new name video. We'll talk about the new name later. I think those are new, but they just didn't give a really good look at the full kit in the video.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the name later. But I think that was kind of like, it's almost like a tease of the new kit because it's obviously new because it's got the new logo on it. So, but.
Yeah,
they didn't really give a full proper look at the kit either. But really
it's not
3 teams really.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the teams that do have kits out. First up, we have the Seattle Seawolves. They've announced their 2023 kit. It's a bit of a departure from what they've had in previous seasons. So, and the thing as well that I should mention about all of the teams is that they all have 3 kits. They have home, away, and then basically a second away kit to avoid clashing.
Alternate kits.
Yeah, home, away, alternate. So the home jersey is much darker now. It's practically black with green orca fins.
It is black, I think.
Yeah. Well, once again, it's one of these things where it's a mock-up. It's not actually someone in the kit, so it's harder to tell.
In the wording, though, in the write-up, it says the distinct black, inspired by the distinctive black and white markings of an orca.
And then the away kit is their white. It's a standard white they have, and that is more their traditional colors of white, blue, and green to go with the Seattle Seawolves logo. And yeah, I get it. I understand. It's a pretty good kit. And then they also have their training kit, which I'm pretty sure will become their third kit, and that's more the traditional blue, heavy emphasis on the green on the sides, and in the same way that like Nola Gold have their Mardi Gras kit, and it's like, oh, it's a training kit, and then they rock out with it every other game. So I'm like, we'll see.
So I'm kind of like looking at like Seawolves jerseys throughout the years. And I think, like you said, it's like the Warriors, which we'll talk about in a minute, as well as the Free Jacks, which we'll also talk about in a minute. Like they announced 3, and I'm like, I think the black, like the Orca design one, would have been like a really cool third kit.
Yeah,
but I gotta say, in a league that has so many like black and dark blue teams, I really miss the bright green jersey.
Yeah, it's
I feel like I miss that one a lot. I really like the bright green one. And even the blue that kind of had the bright green on it. Like I said, it's like sometimes in mock-ups and stuff, it doesn't come across quite right. But I'm just kind of like, I feel like that bright green is kind of an iconic Seattle sports team color, and I would just like to see them kind of lean into it a little bit more with this year's kit designs.
I get it. That makes sense. Well, we go from one black kit to another as Utah have announced their jerseys as well. Their home jersey is a black kit with marking design. It's, again, I think there's only one shot of a player actually wearing it, and they're crossing their arms whilst doing so you can't really see. Also, the background is black as well, so it's really hard to pick out like the individual details. But at the same time, it's the 4 red lines across the chest. If you've seen the Utah jersey before, it's pretty similar, nothing too far different. What is a bit different is the away jersey, which is having an emphasis on the red, but it highlights the pattern that I believe is on the home and away kit of 4 lines in like an intricate pattern.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's definitely unique.
It's really cool. I love it. Yeah.
It's a cool design, and with the photo of the player in it, it looks much better. So this is one that I can definitely see like being better on the pitch than it does in the previews. But again, that's just me. And then finally, we have their third kit, which replaces the black with white. It's again a 4-line pattern, but it's a different pattern. It's more like chevrons than a solid color. And then it's the left sleeve, and the entire back of the kit is all in red. And I think this one looks like this one's definitely unique. I think it's gonna be a definite fan favorite, and obviously having a white kit is definitely worthwhile having in the MLR. But no, that's really nice.
I absolutely love what Utah did with their kits this year. I think like Utah's branding has been pretty well done throughout their entire existence, and even like some small things like last year being one of the only teams to have like a 5-year anniversary patch and stuff. Like Utah always seems to hit the mark with a lot of these kits and stuff. And I mean they've been using their that kind of like that 4-word like motto and like the 4 stripe imagery that is associated with their like team's motto throughout basically for the last few years. And yeah, like I really like how the home kit incorporates the 4 stripes again. They kind of look like they updated it a little bit. Just with it looks like if you go on their Instagram, I think they have a lot better pictures. They kind of have the 4 stripe pattern going through the whole jersey. It's also black. But it actually looks really cool. So they got a similar pattern. I love the away. The red stripes going all different directions looks phenomenal. And the best part is it looks phenomenal, and I cannot think of another rugby team in the world that wears something even remotely close to this. Like, this is just it. Like, is a pure like Utah Warriors. Like, if they just should stick with this, because if they're like they should just honestly, like, this is like one of those jerseys I'm like, you need to keep this. Like, I don't even know why you would bother designing a different jersey for next year. Like it's perfect, and it's got like if like it's like has that like almost like iconic kind of feel to it, where it's like I think they have created something that no other team in the world is ever going to use, and it works so well for their team. And I think they need to like stick with that. This is to me, this is easily the best Utah Warriors jerseys that they've ever worn. All 3 of them going across. I'm looking at them on my phone now. Like they just like the white one too, the white and red. It works so well. The number font's great. Numbers are clearly visible and stuff too, which is also kind of important. But like, yeah, phenomenal. Love it. Love the video that they dropped them with too.
Yeah,
that was super well done. Just a plus all around for Utah. These are phenomenal. Phenomenal.
All right, 2 things I want to say to that. One, I still love the Utah's like mountain range red shirt from cool. I think Utah 2 seasons ago.
Jerseys, yeah.
But I think you're also forgetting their Top Gun inspired shirts from last season as well.
I did forget about that. Yeah, where are those?
But those are one-off, so I'll let that slide. That's okay. And then
you get your one-off jerseys. Those were cool.
Okay, so we've had Seattle, we've had Utah, and now the final team is the New England Free Jacks, who, we have one team that has the US flag on their chest. So how can you stay as patriotic as possible whilst having a different color scheme? And of course, it is the red, white, and blue. It's their striped jersey. It's with the collars. It's pretty familiar, pretty, so this time around, we got the hoops. They're a bit thicker this time, and it is, so the red jersey, it's the red is at the top, and it's
that's the only difference. The stripes are in a different order.
The stripes are a bit thicker, and then for the blue, it's the blue and red switches round. The white jersey is the biggest difference. It is white, then blue, then red, and then white all the way down. Like even the shorts are white as well, to just like completely match and bring it all together. And the one thing that like just hurts me a little bit is that Cole Keith is advertising the white jersey on Instagram. It's like he's gone. Yeah. He's definitely gone.
Yeah.
Also the fact that I know Josh jersey, though. And this is the thing, is like I know Josh Larson is the captain and he should be wearing the jersey, but as a Canadian, why didn't you put him in the red kit? I'm just wondering.
Because that's
their decision.
Team USA. It's the Free Jacks. It's not. not Team
I mean, they are red, white, and blue. It's kind of hard to get past that. But you know, if
that was, I didn't expect to see Cole Keith being the guy to be like in the jersey for the press release here. But I'm like, yeah, it's but he's there. Good for him, man. Good for him.
It's even funny because in the video that it's advertising shirt, Cole Keith's not in that, but Josh Larson is, and
Sakara.
Yeah, he's in the red kit, and so it's like, oh, we just switch it out for the white jersey. But...
You got to go with your most marketable people for when you do these drops. And I mean, clearly the Free Jacks have listened to Cole Keith on our podcast numerous times, and they're like, this is the guy we got to go with for all our marketing. And I agree with that decision. The jerseys themselves, I mean, the Free Jacks can't do anything wrong with kit, right? Like realistically.
It's like the collars are a mainstay.
Yeah, collars, the hoops, everything. It's unreal once again. I like when the Seawolves dropped their new kit and the Free Jacks did the Free Jacks had an announcement that they were selling like old school like cotton rugby jerseys in their shop, and it was like you go through those designs and you're just like, this team is just like this team is just like, look at how awesome the kit we don't even wear is, and then we're gonna drop our real kit and it does look amazing. I'm not gonna lie, I got a small gripe with them this year though. Previous years I'd be like, they're perfect. Small gripe with this one though. The white kit. White kit. Don't do a white number on white kit.
Okay.
That they have the one image of it with their little video, right? And it's like the blue kit, nice blue square around the numbers, very visible. The red kit, nice red square around the numbers, very visible. The white one doesn't have the square, and it's like it genuinely like, unless like in reality, because the pictures that they showed of the players actually wearing the jersey, like they didn't show what the one on Cole Keith's back looks like, right? But it's like in the video with like the the computer generated image of what the kit's gonna look like, when it shows the back of the jersey, it's the number 12, I think, because the bottom is all white and it just blends way too much, right? And I'm just like, that looks like I just hope I hope in real life that number looks a lot more visible, like it's like a thicker blue line or something like that. Differentiate it, because it's white that goes into white, and it looks like in the video that they released, it kind of looks like the number sort of disappears a little bit.
Well, that's the thing. These are just like,
that's my one gripe.
These are just CGI images. It's really hard to tell, and obviously they'll be getting like feedback from players and production and stuff like that, and or even just change the color of the numbering and lower it a bit. So
I know that realistically this is probably the equivalent of complaining about Sam Malcolm going 11 for 12 off the tee in a game, because you'd be like, it's right, you're like, it's like, no, it's like, we've seen what you've done before, and we'd kind of demand a little bit of perfection.
11 out of 12. Ship him back.
Yeah, exactly. So
we
kind of demand some perfection, though. So I mean, you got to go with you might not get the A++ grading this year. You're probably going to get relegated to just an A+ now. So, but yeah, they're amazing.
All right, and we've mentioned it already a little bit, but the defending champions of MLR, Rugby New York, have changed their name to Rugby New York Ironworkers, which is a bit of a mouthful, to say the least. But I think the idea is that they are planning eventually to like promote the Ironworkers name, and whilst it's easier for us to say, just call yourselves New York Ironworkers. I think it is a exercise in branding. It's like this season, like people who may have heard of like Rugby New York, and then if they hear Rugby New York Ironworkers, they're like, oh, this is something similar. But if you just hear New York Ironworkers, you may just think of the profession of
New York Ironworkers, of the union.
So that's what I think. I think it's like, we'll give him a season to blend the names together, and then next season they may change it to New York. But they've been changing their name a lot. First Rugby United New York, and then Rugby New York, then Rugby New York Ironworkers.
Ironworkers, cool name. I like it. It seems like something that's really resonates with the city. That's really cool. I do like that. It's Rugby New York Ironworkers is going to be said once per broadcast when the commentator has to do it officially at the beginning of the game. But that nobody's going to say Rugby New York Ironworkers, and I think it'll become New York Ironworkers to everybody. I just don't. I don't get I feel like so Rugby New York. I'm so happy that they've actually decided to name their team finally. Because Rugby New York is not a name.
No.
We could say what you will about Giltinis and Gilgronis. At least someone tried. At least the name was presented. Rugby New York is a description. That's not a name. And I love the addition of a team name, basically. I think this would work a lot better as New York Ironworkers Rugby, or stick just the RFC at the end of the name, right? New York Ironworkers Rugby Football Club. Right. And I think that if you really want to keep rugby in the name that badly, I think it flows a lot better at the end of the name. Right. Because it's other teams do that, right? You see, there's Arrows merch that has the little RFC tacked onto the logo and stuff, right? Toronto Arrows RFC gets shortened to everybody calling it the Toronto Arrows, and that's how we commonly refer to it, right? You can do that with basically the Seawolves have a lot of merchandise that says Seawolves Rugby on it, right? It's just rugby sounds. I'm wearing a shirt on this podcast right now. It says Arrows Rugby. It sounds rugby sounds better if you put it at the end of the name. That's all I'm saying.
No, I get that.
But beyond that, though, I really like the name. It's cool. I think I think this will help a lot more with the branding and the identity. You know what I mean? I think it's what we've been talking about on this podcast a little bit lately about the future and stuff, right? And being MLR's impact on the future and what it could, and it's if you previously you want to say kids that can grow up to be an arrow, or they want to grow up to be a saber cat, or a sea wolf, or anything. I don't know what people that wanted to play New York would have previously said. It's I want to grow up to be a rugby in New York. It's right. At least
Rugby United.
Yeah, I want to be a United Rugby, and now we're not united. So right, and now we're not united. So at least they can be I want to be a little kid that wants to play pro rugby can be I want to be an iron worker, play with Dylan Fawcett one day, right? And I think that's really cool. It is is it fascinating that rugby, this team was once united, then was no longer united, and now is named after a union?
Yeah,
is that what a bizarre,
interesting thing to think of? And something else to be, it's not just a new name, it's also a new stadium. We're no longer in a high school stadium in New Jersey. We're now in a high school stadium in Mount Vernon, because the Ironworkers are
stadium. It's a municipal stadium that a high school team plays at.
Okay, fair enough. Because actually, that is the difference.
It's a big difference.
Now they can sell alcohol at this stadium.
That's important.
That was a big thing that was being asked about in the MLR subreddit, but they will be playing at the newly renovated Mount Vernon Memorial Stadium for the 2023 season. For those of you in New York, it is accessible from Manhattan by a 25-minute train ride from Grand Central Station. It's also right off the Hutchinson River Parkway and close to the I-95 and Cross County Parkway. So Hoboken, I think I saw tweets from the Hoboken Rugby Club or Rugby Union, which indicated that it was just a one-year deal with JFK Stadium. This stadium is, first of all, in New York, which is very fair. It's
in New York State.
Well, which is still New York, and they could play in Buffalo. They'd still be in New York.
They have played in Buffalo. They played the Arrows in a preseason scrimmage
But that wasn't a proper game because then they'd have to announce that they lost. But
I don't think they actually kept score for the game, to be honest.
Yeah, of course they didn't keep score because they lost. That's why.
We know who won.
It's like, I don't know who. I don't know how many tries we conceded because
I'll say what I drew. The one thing I really remember from that is Dan Moore had the nastiest behind the back pass to Ben Lesage for a try. Like he drew in 3 defenders and the offload is just no look behind the back.
Yeah, and that's why they didn't keep score because they don't want to be reminded
honestly,
that they lost.
It's honestly one of the best Arrows tries that nobody. It's probably the best Arrows try that no one's ever seen, unless you were there. So it is actually it was an incredible little display of skill in a preseason scrimmage game thing.
Yeah. Well, it may not be the Red Bull Arena, but it's definitely an improvement from.
It is one of those things sometimes where I do look at that because, like you said, high school plays there, and I think a minor, a youth football team plays there, and I'm like, that's a stadium for a youth football team.
If you look at the stadium itself, it's a stadium for every single sport.
Yeah. America does sports differently, man. That stadium looks really nice. It actually looks really nice.
It does look really nice, but I think for the purists out there who do not enjoy the multiple lines across the field, I'm going to say you're not going to enjoy this. This is football lines, baseball lines. There's an athletics track surrounding it as well. But you make do with what you can. Obviously, real estate in New York is very expensive. You got to take what you can get, and
I mean, most teams in the league play on a multi-use stadium.
And that's until everyone is like Houston with their own rugby-specific stadiums, and I get this is just going to be how things are going to be in MLR for the time being. But, brand new stadium, brand new facilities. Hopefully they can get people to, if they could get people to get to New Jersey, hopefully they can get people to get to Mount Vernon and the Memorial Stadium for the next season. And, we're coming to the end of the podcast now, and you're thinking where can I watch rugby? And, we're coming up to the end of the year. We're hoping to have an interview lined up for you next week, which means that will be our final episode of 2022. So where can you watch rugby in the meantime? Well, at the moment, as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, the Champions and Challenge Cup is going on at the moment, and you can legally watch that at epcrugby.tv. You will have to pay for weekend passes, and that will continue up until May, I believe. It's the second round of the pool stages. Then we have the domestic leagues, and then back at the start of January, I believe, with the Champions Challenge Cup, and you can watch it there. So over the holiday period, you can watch the Premiership and URC on Sportsnet, especially on Boxing Day when the Boxing Day derbies take place. And that's definitely something to look out for. We will hopefully be back in times for the next round of the Sevens, but if we aren't for whatever reason, you'll be able to find that on CBC and CBC Gem. And of course, coming up next year, we have the Six Nations and then some unknown, we don't want to talk about it. So something like the men's rugby world club. I say skip that. It's not important. No North American team wants to take part in it anyway, so who cares? It's fine. But the Six Nations, that'll be available on
Gary
DAZN.
Gold getting fired now that we're on the US.
Oh yeah. How weird is that an American team doesn't qualify for the Men's Rugby World Cup and their head coach resigns?
Yeah, and other people.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
No.
Rugby Canada? Could you?
Yeah, that seemed to be kind of the sentiment about it from the Canadian fan point of view. It's this is an option, isn't it? Oh,
yeah, it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah.
Interesting to see what happens next year.
Yeah. But anyway, you can watch the Six Nations at least on DAZN, and hopefully, if there is any international rugby that Canada, the men's team at least, will be taking part in, We'll get that out to you. Hopefully it's on TSN. Maybe the World Cup is on it. We don't know at this point, but we will be here next year to let you know all about it. In fact, if you want to keep up to date with us whilst we are away for the holiday period, you can do so across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And that is at Rouge Rugby. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel, again, at Rouge Rugby. And if you liked listening to this podcast, you can do so on Anchor FM, our Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Derek, where can the fine people find you on social media?
At Percept the Jet across all social media networks.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, as I mentioned, we're hoping to have one more episode before we conclude 2022. But if this is the only one, thank you so much for joining us. Derek, thank you so much for joining me for another episode where we talk about Arrow signings and fashion choices in MLR, as well as the future of Sevens. Again, thank you all for joining us for this year with the Rouge Rugby podcast. We hope you can join us again next time.